Welcome to the Housing Provider Show. This is your source to be a better housing provider, not only to your tenants, but also to make sure that your real estate investments are more profitable and less stressful. We have the tips for you to be able to run your Chicagoland property in the best way possible, keeping your profits up and keeping your stress down. As always, I'm your host, Tim Harstead, alongside Dave Bovyn. How you doing, Dave?
Great. How you doing today, Tim?
Hey, you know what? This is being recorded on 10/14. I know it probably won't be released for another 30 days, but the Bears just came off Monday Night Football, beating the Commanders. So, like like the rest of Chicago, we're in good moods. That was a very interesting game, and I think Chicago collectively, if you're not from here, the amount of influence that the Bears have on a given week and the mood of everyone is insane.
100%.
So today we had a good episode for everyone. We're going to be talking about winterizing. We got some good questions from the crowd that have come in. But first, I think you wanted to talk. You were talking to another realtor about the rates coming down and the effects that we're seeing. You were just at what was the event that you were at? The Illinois?
It was called Reignite. It's the fall meetings for Illinois realtors. And the event was great itself, but it was nice to meet with other agents and kind of talk shop. And a lot of what I was coming across is that business is picking up, which is great for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So the market, it's been a weird market for 2 years. It's no one's fully been able to explain it. And someone finally, I'm going to break it down here because someone finally did explain it to me, because we're now in a buyer's market, in my opinion, after being in a seller's market for so long. But it's the weirdest buyer's market I've seen in my lifetime, only because prices keep rising. And basically what's happening is inflation is outpacing the slide of the sellers. So we're seeing less homes sell on a given month over the last year or so. But the prices are still going up. But it's giving buyers that little advantage. Although there are still some multi situations, depending on the area you're in, you're going to be in multi-offer situations, but it's not as it was a couple of years ago. Because a couple of years ago, if you put a house up for sale or an investment property up for sale, you had 10 offers over the weekend.
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable.
And some of that was good, but also I think a lot of that led to some misbuying, some people overpaying for some things. And now, we have clients coming to us that bought a couple of years ago, overpaid because they were getting outbid. So they paid $50,000 more, and they want to know, how do they recoup that $50,000? Unfortunately, the answer is time. You have to hold on to the investment until it starts making sense again. You might be breaking even for a while. Eventually it's going to catch up, and eventually rent will catch up to it, and you're going to be okay. So to all those people that have done that, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it through. But I think one of the things that we're seeing shift everything that you want to talk about were rates. So what are you seeing in that sense?
Honestly, the biggest thing that I've seen is just the small incremental drops bring buyers out in droves. Mm-hmm. It's been unbelievable the amount of people that are coming, even just in my own situations. I've noticed buyers that I talked to 6 months ago, 8 months ago, as soon as they dropped even just a little tiny bit, mm-hmm. right back on the wagon. Hey, let's go. What's going on? Yep. What can we see tomorrow? And that's positive for everybody. If you're looking to sell, if you're looking to buy, hopefully it keeps people on their toes and can get some stuff going.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to get back to the 2% or 3% rates. I hope we don't, because it truly meant our economy was getting shit on really, really bad. So I hope we don't get back there. But I also think that I hope that we get low enough. And I think 4.5, 5, when we hit that point in maybe 6 months from now, that it'll be low enough to drag out the sellers that really want to move, but just feel so bad getting rid of a mortgage with a 3% rate and going to a 7.
Right.
And just to touch base on that a little bit, if you are in those situations but you need to move, there are some options. And one of the big ones I think some people don't realize is you can rent out your property, have a property management company rent out your property for you, and then use that income as income to offset your first mortgage. and then go and get a second, go and get another mortgage on a home. So now you have a rental property. Even if you've been living in there for 10 years, you turn it into a rental property. And then you make some cash flow on that. You can get some depreciation, do some write-offs, do some fancy tax things there, and then go and still move. So if, the world's calling you and telling you, hey, there's a new job gig in LA, there's still a way that you can move, but and without having to sell your house. So there's some options there.
Right. So from a listener standpoint, if you're talking exactly the scenario that you just brought up, if I was to rent my house out, I would rent it out for now because the rates are so high. Then when the time comes that the rates are low enough that I'm comfortable, I refinance the new house I purchased and sell the old one, and I'm basically back to where I was at.
Yeah. And a lot of the times it can be done with very little work. You've already been living there. And most of the time when we talk to homeowners that were living in their property, they take care of the property so much better. And I'm foreshadowing something we're going to talk about in a little bit, but they often take care of their own property better than rental property.
I would.
Yeah. And it makes sense sometimes, but sometimes to a detriment with the rental property. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but a lot of times you can get away with a quick paint of the home. If that, depending on how long you've been there. That's something else. It's come up a couple times this week with different clients and different prospects, painting. And we didn't actually have that one, but we're rolling into it. If you're a landlord and you're trying to rent a property out for top dollar and a tenant just moved away after 4 or 5 years, you need to repaint the unit. And a lot of landlords don't realize that, or they don't want to spend the money. This is an investment. You are trying to get a tenant that is going to stay there for a long time. And people will point to the fact that, I still found a tenant, and they still often can. But the level of tenant that you're going to get with a apartment that hasn't been painted in 4 or 5 years is so much lower because they're not getting approved. They're losing out to better tenants in the better properties, and you're getting sort of the bottom of the barrel because your apartment looks like shit, or it looks, like just naturally people are going to scratch up walls. It's going to fade. You can use a little bit higher end paint and get a little bit better coverage and make it last a little bit longer. But I mean, I feel like we change at least one room every couple of months in my house, the colors. I don't know how you guys are with it, but.
No, very similar. And, touching on painting, in a previous life, my father has owned a construction company my whole life. So I've done a ton of painting for him. And just over the past 5 or 6 years, the quality of paint has increased so much that the cost of getting paint jobs done has actually decreased because the time that it takes to paint is less. You don't need 4 coats on a brick wall anymore.
Yeah.
It's definitely doable.
Yeah, we honestly, a lot of our stuff are getting 1 coat, maybe a couple touch-ups. If the only time we really have to do touch-ups if someone decided to, sometimes you get that tenant that decides they're going to paint their own wall and they decide to do blood red or do something crazy, super dark colors, then you might need to be able to bring it light. You might need a couple coats there. But generally speaking, like you said, buy the good paint, pay the extra $30. A 5-gallon top line of Behr is like 200, 220. And then the bottom line is like 180, 175, something like that. So, I mean, you're looking at like a $40 difference. But labor-wise, it's going to save you a day.
Especially if you're the kind of landlord that's doing these things yourself. If you're going in there and you're painting it, you're already saving on the labor. Buy the best paint.
And this is probably a little delayed. So the story I'm about to go into is, again, this is October 14th. By the time this is published, I don't know where we're going to be at, but I wanted to touch base right now in Chicago, at least what's going on with ICE. I don't want to get too political, although we could. And I think me and you, Dave, are on the same side, but I don't know where everyone else is with it. But I just want to talk about real shit that's happening right now. We're seeing a lot of protest. We're seeing a lot of, ICE coming in and some of the videos. I'll be personally honest. I've gotten off of Facebook and TikTok recently just because it's starting to get depressing to see everything going on here and to see all the fights and to see the tear gassing. Whether you're seeing cops getting tear gas, whether you're seeing protesters getting, it's children. It's crazy and it's hard to watch, but it does have a real life effect that I think we owe our fans or our viewers to talk about on the rental side. And whether you're in Chicago now seeing it, or if this is a month later and you're in wherever they decide to go next. I've heard rumors of Memphis. I've heard, obviously they probably will end up back in LA at some point. They're in
Memphis
DC.
is what I heard recently as well.
So we'll see where they're at by the time this is published, but at least so you guys can see a couple of effects. The first is on leasing. I want to talk about. I've had leasing agents that have had tons of cancellations I've been talking to, just because certain areas where there are protests, if the protest is going anywhere near your apartment building, traffic is stopped. There's normal life, which is sort of the point of the protest, right? Is to stop normal life. And that's happening. So we're seeing agents, hey, I can't get to a property, because there's a protest here, or ICE is over here and they have everything barricaded. So day-to-day life in that sense is sort of being stalled, which means not only do we have that ICE, but in Chicago, we're very seasonal to begin with. So October is normally a slowdown.
Right.
So I think we're going to continue to see leasing expand a little bit in terms of days on market because there's these events that are happening.
What would you say is like, I know we're in an odd time right now, but typically when October comes, fall comes, what is the shift in time on market?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a sliding scale, I think. I think so. Again, Chicago has always been very seasonal with leasing. I would say leasing season is April 1st to October 1st. Generally it's a 3 to 4 week time on market is what's expected. And depending on how you calculate it, some people will say, oh, I got a lease in 3 days. So it's a 3-day market. Yeah, but you put it up and then they're not moving in until the 1st. So it's not, I don't know how you want to calculate it, because I'm going to when they move in. It's generally, they're going to move in on the next 1st after you start advertising it. Come October, November, December, I think it starts expanding closer to 6 to 8 weeks. January, for whatever reason recently, and this is honestly since COVID, because I used to just be able to go through November, December, January, February, March, and it would all be the same. But January, for some reason, we see a spike in rentals again over the last 3 or 4 years. And then February and March, leasing picks up for April 1st. But like if you're talking about for March 1st, it slows back down. So you'll have a little blip in January, but it really starts to slow, almost double the leasing time in the winter, which is why we advise a lot of our clients to try to get either a 9-month lease, which I know is, a lot of people are just, we got to do a year. This is one where 9 months can benefit you in the long run, even though in the short run it might hurt, or a 16-month lease to sort of just get out of the winter and go a little bit over a year if you can get it. You might be discounting a little bit for that, but it's worth it often. So that's what I've been seeing.
All right, that makes sense.
So going back to the ice effect and just the rain there and everything, we're also seeing a lot of businesses affected. So we're seeing restaurants being shut down. We're seeing a lot of places that just don't have workers coming to work. And it's not just, look, you can blame the whole, okay, it's an illegal immigrant, so they're not going to work. Fine. That's, that's great. That's what they're trying to do, blah, 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 blah. But the way that things are happening, the way that when we talk to people in, we manage mostly on the south side of Chicago. So it's a lot of minority tenants. And when you talk to a lot of them, even though they're fully citizens, even though, they're minorities, and the way that things are going with ICE in reality is that they are shoot first and figure it out later. They're not if you look like a minority on the south side of Chicago right now, you're in, there's things that can happen that are going on to people that look like you. And so because of that, you're seeing a lot more call-offs. You're seeing a lot. I went to a bar the other day and they barely had anyone working, like just people don't want to come to work. People aren't risking it to come to work.
No, I've went to restaurants recently that were the same way. They had changed hours because they couldn't get the employees to come in.
Mm-hmm. So what does that affect? That means your tenants aren't getting paid. That means there's, whether your tenant is the owner of the restaurant or your tenant's the cook or whatever, they're not getting the income that they had. So, rent's going to be later, or just when you're leasing again, you're going to have less qualified people coming to you because they're not working as much. So it's having a major effect. The last, then this is the story that sort of made us start talking about ICE today. We just had a tenant that went to, she was on a green card. She was here, did all the right steps, et cetera, that they talk about. And she went to immigration court a couple weeks ago, and they deported her from there. So we have, a lease being broken at that point. And she was a tenant for, I think, 6-7 years. This, oddly enough, was a property in a better neighborhood, compared to a lot that we manage. So this is a $2,400-$2,500 rental. And, it's just you're all of a sudden your tenant's gone.
Right.
Oddly enough, in case people are wondering, apparently they sent someone to her home to get all her belongings and ship it back with her.
Now, who did? Her family or
the immigration apparently. Well, I don't know exactly. I just know that when we got there was, some trash left over, but nothing, it wasn't couches and beds and everything. Like, majority of the stuff was gone. So that did help, and that does make it a little bit clearer of a picture if you're a landlord that has something like that happen to you that you can take back over right away and try to re-rent it right away.
Now, if something like that does happen and you're a landlord, pretty much you're stuck just re-renting the place. There's no recourse for you in that situation, I'm assuming.
I just don't see. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how. What are you gonna? You can't, unless you fly down to South America somewhere, right, to wherever they're being deported to, and file a lawsuit. Where? Who are you going to file against? What are you going to file against? I just don't see a way to, even if you went and got a judge to say you win. Okay, how do you collect?
No, I 100% agree. I was just thinking, as a landlord, I could see is there anything I could do about this? Unfortunately, it sounds like you cannot.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like there is. I don't know the answer 100% on that. There might be, but it's one of those things. We talk about this with evictions a lot. We'll get a lot of landlords that are like, I evicted my tenant. Now I'm going to go after them. And, or we get clients that you evicted the tenant. Can you go after them and get the money? We need to, sir, if I could have got the money from them, they wouldn't have been evicted.
So you're going to spend more money to go after them for money that you're never going to collect.
Yeah. Basically what's it's one of those things. You put it on their credit report. Even if you give it to a collection agency, they're going to take 40% of whatever they get. 10 years from now, you might get a call that's from someone saying, hey, we collected $1,000 because they were trying to get it off their record. Oftentimes we see that where, a tenant decides to buy a house and there's the eviction on there and the money owed, and they want to up their credit score, so they finally pay some of it off. But we're talking about 5-10 years. We're talking about a very small percentage. It's not worth thinking about very long. Send it to a collection agency, sure, sign it away, let them deal with it. But to lose sleep over it, it's over. You lost. You put the wrong tenant in, the wrong thing happened. Whatever it was, just sort of, you got to move on to the next game.
Right.
So yeah, that's that. And talking about ICE, the topic of the day, and we want to talk about winter. In Chicago, we get real winter, we get icy, we get snow, we get cold, all that stuff. And we want to make sure that landlords are prepped for this. So want to go through a couple of things that you can do if you're a landlord and you're listening to this in November, December, maybe January, February, you're seeing it a little bit later, and you're wondering, how do I prevent big issues in my property? And a lot of it's going to come down to things that you can do before true winter comes, or even if you're listening to this and you didn't do any of this, go do it now, because nothing is broken yet. Go get this done.
Right.
So in winter, Chicago has a law from September 15th to June 1st that's going to make sure that during the day, 68 degrees inside the home, and during night it has to be 66 degrees. So this is if you control the heat for your units, whether it's an individual unit that you control and you're paying for, or you have boilers for you in your building and you control the heat for everything. We need to make sure that the heat is on when it gets cold and that we are able to keep it at 68 during the day, 66 at night. Otherwise, the city of Chicago can come with huge fines. So we want to make sure that seems easy enough. The problem lies with the 2 a.m. calls that you're going to get when your furnace goes out. And this is one of my favorite stories to tell about a client. We took over, and the first winter, they're having all these issues with their furnace. And he calls me. He's like, I just don't understand why. Like, and we took over middle of winter, like maybe January or something like that. So it was past the time when we would have done all of what I'm about to tell everyone to do. But he goes, I don't understand. My home furnace, I pay $150 or something like that a year to one of the big companies. They come in, they clean it, they look at it, and I never spend any more money than that. My furnace is about the same age as the Tenant's one. I don't get it. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, who did you know? Let's talk to the people that service it. They should have caught this ahead of time. Oh no, I don't pay for that for the rental. Huh? Yeah. It's often too many times that we have the right idea at home, but then we don't realize it's called an investment for a reason. You need to invest in it. You need to throw money back in. These are properties that are potentially going to take care of you until you're 150 years old or until you sell them. If you're afraid or pinching pennies and not willing to put money in on preventative maintenance, it's going to cost you a lot more when at 2 a.m. you need to call an HVAC guy to come out and replace your furnace.
Right. And it goes a lot deeper than that too, in the sense that the whole basis of making money in this industry is getting tenants to stay long term.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make money. If every year your furnace goes out and your tenants are leaving because they're pissed off that they didn't have heat for 2 days, you're going to have to turn it over every year because people are getting angry. Yeah,
and not to mention that you're probably paying for a hotel while you wait for the parts to come in. You're probably losing money because you're paying for parts instead of again, cleanups. These, depending on where you go, you're looking at $100 to $150 to get a furnace service every year, and that service that furnace is going to last now 20 to 25 years instead of 15 to 16 with the issues going on consistently. So it's huge. The other thing I will throw on, the average furnace's lifespan is about 20 years, 18 to 20 years. If you got a 30-year-old furnace and you haven't started saving up to fix it yet, or you haven't thought about replacing it yet, do yourself a favor. And it is so much cheaper to pay someone to replace the furnace when you can schedule it a week out in the middle of summer than it is to replace it at 2 a.m. in the morning. On the coldest day of the year when everything decides to break down.
And that's always when it happens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It will happen. You will get the call. There are two things that are, they say taxes and death. That's like the worldwide thing. In real estate investing, it's two things: vacations and midnight. That's when all the problems happen. So if you want to have issues at your property, go on vacation. Without a property manager assigned and without having everything in place, guarantee your vacation will get ruined properly until you figure that out. So get your furnace tuned up. If it's over 20, 22 years, think about starting to replace it, or at least start to have that slush fund to replace it. The other quick ones we want to talk about: make sure your exterior hose bibs are turned off, drained, insulated, all that stuff. You don't want it dripping and causing it to freeze and causing a major issue there. Inspecting the insulation in the attic, the foundation cracks, things like that. We want to make sure that, nothing is coming in, that, you're not getting, all your heat's not escaping. That's the other one too. If you're paying for a boiler, especially, and if you care about your tenants and they're paying for the heat, you want to make sure that their heat's not all escaping, which brings up weather stripping. So make sure your windows and your doors all have weather stripping on them so that cold air isn't coming through. The other issue that happens in the winter, I don't know if you realize this, but when it's cold outside, your home is warm, and a lot of people want to be inside, but also a lot of rats and mice. And
That's an issue?
yeah, they get cold too. And that's when you're going to see an increase in that. So if you're not already on a quarterly pest control issue or a plan and things like that, you want to make sure you're on something like that so that you can have the poison outside the home to attract them and try to, keep them warm and go there. But more than that, we want to make sure that we're sealing up any holes, any concrete, any bricks that have holes in them, and the easy target, the doors and windows and stuff like that. We want to make sure that we take care of all that as we go. Last, if you do one thing, I want you guys to go into the description below. Dave has put together a preventative maintenance checklist for the landlords in Chicago. Click the link, look at the instructions, however he decides to do it. Make sure you get it. Make sure you're checking everything off in it. It's free. It's our gift to you for being a listener. Use it, guys. If you have a property manager, make sure they're using it. If you have us as a property manager, we're already using it, you're in good hands. But if you're doing it yourself or you have a property manager, make sure that they see the checklist, make sure that you see the checklist, and make sure that you are using it for this winter to make sure that your property is not having bursting pipes. Speaking of bursting pipes, what was it? 23, so 2 years ago, Christmas Eve, we had some fun times because it was 8 degrees outside on Christmas Eve. And with the wind chill, we were at negative 10, 15, and we started having pipes burst across Chicago. So that, took us away from dinner, took us away from, and this brings up 2 points. One, if you are self-managing, you need to make sure that you have plumbers at the ready and not just, hey, I know I'm going to Google a plumber when it happens, because it's going to happen at the worst time. And if you don't know, if you haven't talked to someone that said, hey, I'm willing to go out on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day to go solve your problem or at least get the water turned off, you're going to be in a world of hurt when things happen like that.
Right.
Some of it is preventable, right? So a couple things we want to talk about. If you have a unfinished basement that's not heated, we want to get heaters down there. We want to make sure that we get the pipes down there. If you have any pipes that are close to walls, we want to make sure that we get them insulated and get the foam cover over them to make sure that we can keep those warm even when it does get cold outside. That's going to help a long way. The other thing is we want to talk to our tenants, and we want to make sure that they understand what their job is. So if you see that the weather is going to drop below 10 degrees, start sending out messages to all your tenants to say, hey, you are responsible for this. And this goes back to writing your lease, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you need to have in your lease that they're responsible for this. And if this happens because of them, that they're going to have to pay for it. But they need to make sure that the heat is on. It needs to be at 65 at least. Even if they leave the country and go to Mexico because it's cold, the heat needs to be on. They need to pay for that heat. It's their responsibility to take care of that property. So many tenants, well, I'm not home. I'm going to leave it at 40. I'm going to turn it off completely because I don't want to pay for the heat when I'm not there. And then they come home and all their stuff is flooded, and they want it to be your fault. But if your lease is written strongly enough, it's going to fall under their fault. We want to send them reminders. We want to let them know, hey, it's cold. It's getting cold. We need to make sure this is good. The other part is dripping your faucets, especially older pipes, things like that. Especially if you have pipes underground or in susceptible areas close to the walls of the house. We want to make sure that all your sinks are dripping just a little bit. I know you're going to get a little bit higher of a water bill. Trust me, it's not going to be a lot. It's not going to be like summertime when you're running the hose to the garden or do anything like that. It's pennies that you're going to be saving, and it's going to save you thousands of dollars by having all your tenants drip on their pipes. And again, point out if you did your lease right. Point out the fact that, hey, this is your responsibility. You need to do this. If something is to happen because you didn't do this, the $1,000 charges are coming to you. And most tenants are going to be much happier and much, they're going to oblige knowing that, hey, this is what I have to do to make sure that my house is cool.
honestly, I think you touched on everything that I would point out. The only thing that I will mention is going back to your thoughts on having plumbers on call. Is that one thing that I've done personally for a couple of different vendors that I've used is, before the season comes, if you're sending holiday cards or stuff like that, send a batch of cookies to your plumber. Make them like you. Be nice. Don't do whatever you can so that you're on their good side, so that when you do call them at 1 a.m. on Christmas Eve, they're more obliged to go out than to tell you, oh, sorry, I'm already, I'm busy.
Yep. No, for sure. And have that conversation with them. Cause like, if they're not, some plumbers they just want to, they want to work big jobs. They want to be scheduled. And then there's the other side of the plumbing industry that is charging you more, rightfully so. And this is what they do is they are going to be there 24/7. When you call them, they're going to drop everything and run to you. Those, while more expensive, are more important. Right. Because when things happen, you need to be able to shut off the water. I guess this will be my one tip to that is know where all your water shutoffs are.
Yes.
If you find out where your water shutoffs are, at least you can get the water shut off to the building and eliminate the damage. Now you won't have running water, et cetera, until everything figures out, but that will give you, the night at least to then be able to call the plumber in the morning. So that's the last one. Cool. Let's move on. Again, look in the description, get the free checklist. It's going to come in handy. You want to make sure you did everything that's on that checklist for your properties to make sure that your winter goes well and to save you thousands of dollars. This is something that everyone, I think, is valuable to anyone, whether you're a homeowner without investment properties or an investor. Obviously, do this for your house that you live in as well as the one you're investing in. But Dave, you got a couple questions from the internet that we pulled up and we want to talk about. If you want to go through those and we can give the answers.
Absolutely. All right. Question number 1. Help. I want to serve a tenant with non-renewal. Number 1, their lease has expired and I have not issued a new lease, nor have I given them a month-to-month.
So let's talk about that first. I'm going to stop you. I know you have more. I know you're continuing on, but I want to break each one down. In Chicago, at least, the second, unless for some reason May 1st you did not accept $1 from them, the second they pay you money on May 1st, they are now in a month-to-month lease. You don't have to have them sign anything. You don't have to have anything in there. The minute in Chicago that you accept a rent payment, you are now on a month-to-month lease. All the terms of your previous lease now take effect, except for now it's month-to-month. Go ahead.
All right. Number 2, they are behind on their rent. I would be happy with them leaving and still owing me.
Cool. So go to 3 because I want to answer both. I need 3 to answer 2, but more efficiently.
Number 3 is, do I have to go to court for non-renewal or just have them a non-renewal notice?
Yep. So non-renewals are just like 5 days, right? Generally speaking, if you have a good tenant, they're going to leave when you give them the non-renewal and they're going to go along their way and all that. What scares me here is you're saying they're not paying rent, which means that we shouldn't be non-renewing them. We should be serving them a 5-day notice to start the eviction process there. Hopefully they move out on their own. Hopefully we could do cash for keys or do something to not have to go through the eviction. A non-renewal works the same way as a 5-day notice for non-payment of rent. The only difference is it's after whatever the non-renewal period is, and it's not for non-paying rent. It's saying, hey, at this day, you're supposed to move out. Now, if they don't move out and you're trying to get rid of them, here's a few things that you need to make sure you do. 1, do not collect rent. If you collect rent, your non-renewal is invalid because you just renewed them again. 2, make sure within a reasonable amount of time, a few weeks of the non-renewal notice coming to a conclusion, that you are filing in court. Because if you wait 3 months and then file, the judge is going to say, hey, look, they have reason to believe that you weren't going to file and that you were going to let them stay. And 3, make sure we're filing the correct notice. So in Chicago now, if they've been there for less than 6 months, you have to give them 60-day notice. If they've been there for more than 6 months up to 3 years, you have to give them 90-day notice and then 120-day notice if they've been there for more than 3 years. So make sure that you're giving them the correct notice. Also, make sure that when you give them the notice that you understand how the notice has to be written when it comes to dates. Because 120-day notice isn't, I serve it on the 14th and I count literally on the calendar 120 days. Whatever day you serve it, you're going to wait till the calendar turns to the first again. And then it's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 months from there is when it's going to expire. So if you serve it to, like I said, we're talking on the 14th of October here. I know this might be published a different time, but you serve it on the 14th, you serve a 120-day notice. That's going to mean November is month 1, December, January, end of February is going to be the end of the 120-day notice. And that's when they would have to move out. If they don't move out again, at that point, you want to not collect rent. And then you can file eviction on the 120-day notice. Hopefully they leave on their own though. Hopefully, a lot of times tenants will realize that, all right, cool. I understand you're moving me out for some reason and be cool with it. So hopefully that works. But what scares me in this situation is you have a non-paying tenant, meaning they're not following the rules already. So I would be more aggressive with it. I would serve a 5-day notice. I would talk to them about moving out on their own to avoid having an eviction on their record. And I think that could go a long way. I think that oftentimes, especially if they were good tenants for a year or two, that maybe they hit hard times, maybe something's going on, go talk to them, see if you can get them to move out on their own and avoid having an eviction on their record. Because frankly, an eviction on your record as a tenant is something that can kill you. It can make it really, really hard to find another apartment. So smart tenants know they don't want that.
Right. Now, Tim, when it comes to evictions, I know in the past you've talked about this, but I think it's always good to bring up. You have advice for landlords that collect rent via cash apps in these situations, correct?
Yeah. So there's certain apps that you can't so one, and this is before the eviction, because, if they already have the info, then it's too late. But if you're collecting via Zelle or something that you can't stop payments on or reject payments on, it's very easy for a tenant in the middle of a court battle, you're 4 months in, 5 months in, to Zelle you $20 and then show the judge that you accepted their rent payment. And that kills your 5-day notice and that kills your court case. And now you got to start all over. So I highly recommend not accepting those types of forms of payment. Keep your payments to, either online payments that you can shut off through different portals, or obviously you have to allow them to pay in check, et cetera. But keep it there as things that you can reject and that you can show that you didn't cash. If they mail you a check, you can mail it back. You never cashed it. There's no rent payment recorded. No issue with the eviction.
Right. All right. We do have one more question. How many days do they have to vacate? And if there is a cutoff day to file an eviction?
Yeah. So in terms of how many days, it just, again, it goes back to how long they've lived there and what notice you have to serve them and what day you serve them, I guess, if you're actually counting the amount of days. But it's going to be either 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months, full months that they have to leave. And at that point, then you can work out with them that, hey, you got to leave or I'm going to start filing the eviction. So in terms of cutoff, there's not a cutoff necessarily. There's not a specific day you need to file an eviction on or anything like that. But you can't let your notice expire too long. So if you serve a 5-day notice and you don't file for 3 weeks later, the judge is going to look at that sort of awkwardly and it might hurt you. Same thing with a 120-day notice. If you're not filing the eviction until 60 days, 90 days after it expired, it's going to be a lot easier for the tenant to say, hey, no, I thought we were cool now. We just had a tenant. We're evicting a tenant, and we just got a call from the tenant that's being evicted on their cabinet door is loose, and are we going to send someone to fix it? So I find it funny that some of these tenants just really don't understand hey, look, you're getting kicked out, and they're still demanding things, which is crazy to me. Obviously, if it's life and safety, you still got to go in there. You still got to fix it. If there's a leak in the plumbing, if there's something, electrical issues, something like that, you unfortunately do have to still service your tenant while you're evicting them. If you turn off the heat because you're evicting them, you're going to go to jail. You're going to get fined a huge amount, and they're going to get to stay there. So you got to make sure all that stuff's working. But little things like, hey, the cabinet door is loose or things like that, those are things that you probably don't want to necessarily pay for until they're out.
All right. We have one last question, Tim.
Okay.
And this is a new one. That last question was kind of 4 segments from one person. But this one is from someone who asks, how do you handle petty tenant disputes, such as noise complaints, stomping at all hours of the night and day? I have a 2-flat, and the tenant upstairs has had animosity towards new tenants that moved downstairs since day one. The constant calls 2 to 3 times a week from the tenant upstairs is becoming quite agitating to deal with. I have caught her lying on some of the complaints. I'm having cameras installed. It looks like she's trying to break the lease, but I refuse to due to winter coming and not wanting to deal with finding a new tenant.
So this goes back to my favorite thing to point out, that most new landlords and some old landlords continue to fail at, especially when they're not hiring a good property management company. But your lease is the king of how you will handle everything. Unfortunately, if you just use the standard car lease, your only option is to let them out of the lease or evict them, or, things like that. If you have a good lease and you have fines for these things, you are able to use that lease to deal with the tenants, whether it is the actual people making noise, tenants that you can find them, or in this case where you find them that they're lying, that they're making up stuff to try to get out of the lease, you can use stuff in your lease to fine them for it and to make sure that they are understanding that they can't do that. So we have things in our lease that say, hey, if you call us out and there isn't an issue, or the thing could have been resolved by yourself, that you have to pay for it. So that's something that we would deal with our lease. And at the end of the day, are they still paying? If they're not paying, I'd probably bite the bullet, let them out of their lease, because it's not worth the fight of going through winter and then having to do an eviction. Now you got a year with no rent, et cetera. Going back to what we were talking about before, in the winter, it's probably a 2-month period to find a tenant, sometimes faster. Some will be a little bit slower, but I must rather have that unit vacant without a paying tenant than have a tenant in there that's not paying. So if they start to pull that card, I'd probably let them out if they're going to leave on their own, or start the eviction ASAP. But if if they're still paying, it might be worth, unfortunately for you, and this is the issue with the leases, when you don't have a fining system, it might be worth dealing with it for 4 months. Get to February or January, when leasing is going to be easier and you can get more money for the place, and then get them out, get it painted, and re-rent it. So that would be my option there.
Awesome. And that was the last of our questions.
Cool, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Housing Provider Show. As always, if you guys have questions, feel free to comment below with your question, and we'll answer them on a future show. And thanks for hanging out, and we'll talk soon.
Have a good one, everybody.